Thanks, Alina. Excited to be back with everyone here this afternoon. We are actually going to get started with the benchmark report first. We'll kind of keep you waiting to hear about top dealers towards the second half of this session. But we are going to super excited to get started and talk about our customer and employee experience benchmark report. If you have, been working with us, you know that this is something that a lot of you value, is being able to understand how you stack up against the competition, right? Being able to see your scores against other industry competitors. And so we have been wanting to put something like this together, and we have now had the capabilities to do so and are sharing with you the first ever customer and employee experience benchmark report. So based on the data that we've collected, this report has been built off of this data. It's specifically for the heavy equipment industry. We have been working with dealers across North America, so United States, Canada, as well as Australia. And through that, there's like over 1,000 rooftops that we work with, and we're able to collect this information. So we're going to share with you information as it relates to both voice of customer, voice of employee, and then we're also going to talk about the reputation score for online reviews as well. So I'm going to hand this over to Ryan to share a little bit of information as it relates to the customer experience data that we've collected and the results that we're seeing there.
Thanks, Emily. Yeah, we've been talking about doing something like this for a long time. For people that don't know, we've been collecting data in the equipment space for going on almost 25 years. And so we have massive amounts of trend data to be able to look at, how things have evolved. And thankfully, a lot of the questions that we've asked over the years have stayed consistent, because it's a lot of the same expectations or desires that customers have. And so we've got some fantastic trend data to be able to share. And as Emily shared with you today, you'll be able to download it, and you guys will be the first people to have access to it. So Emily, you want me to just kind of jump in? And
yeah, go for it. We'll talk a little bit about what we're seeing.
Yeah, so as Emily talked about, we're going to talk about customer NPS, we're going to talk about employee NPS, and then we're going to talk about reputation scores. And so from an overall perspective, when we talk about customer NPS, and I know that this is a really common term out there, but just to set the record straight as everybody's listening to us talk about it, NPS is calculated as the percentage of people that mark a 9 or a 10 on overall willingness to recommend, minus the percentage of customers that mark a 6 or below, 6 down to 0. So if we have 100 customers that have responded, and 50 of those customers have given you a 9 or a 10, and 20 have given you a 6 or below, that's 50% minus 20%, which is 30%. So you would have a 30 NPS, not a 30% NPS, but a 30 NPS. And so when we talk about that today, realize also that customer NPS is a little bit different from a scoring perspective than employee NPS. And we tend to find customer NPS is a bit higher than employee NPS. So don't think about scoring or looking at those two segments separately. All right, we'll dig into it a little bit. Overall NPS by size. So the average NPS that we see across equipment dealers is 80, which is a really strong number. And I think that's a testament to the fact that to be able to have a strong dealership, you need to have those ongoing relationships with your customers, and you need to build that bond in their relationship. So I think that high NPS score is a testament to those dealers making sure that they're meeting customer expectations.
And Ryan, too, just to give a level set too, I think, to the audience is that, if you go look at information around Net Promoter Score, you'll see that a lot of times, like a best in class score is going to be a 50 or above, because as Ryan explained how it's calculated, the score can range anywhere from a negative 100 to a positive 100. And so I think that's where, in this industry, if you were to go into it, the expectation of having a score of 50 or above, that you were doing well, based on the general information you read, you would think you're doing a good job, right? But then when you start to look at how your competitors are doing, because of what you were just saying, Ryan, it's significantly different, the gap there between a 50 and an 80 from what we see in this space.
Which, to that point, that's why it's so valuable to have kind of updated benchmarks and being able to track your performance against other like organizations. So great comment.
Yep.
One of the things we also hear is, okay, so these NPS scores are great, but what about my dealer size? Or, I have a different, I'm a large dealer, or I'm a mid-sized dealer, or things like that. And so for this benchmark report, we did break down the report into sizes of dealers. And so what we find is those dealers that have 20 plus locations tends to be an average across the dealership, across the organizations, tends to be about 78 NPS. So slightly below our overall average, not a lot, still a very strong score. But as you're looking at your organization and if you have other metrics, other NPS calculations that you're getting from other sources and things like that, we show that about 78 NPS in that 20 plus locations. On the mid-sized dealers, we're classifying those as somewhere between 6 and 19 locations. That's just a hair below the large dealer at 77 NPS, so 1 point below. Obviously very close, still really tight numbers. Where it becomes interesting is our small dealers, the classification of 1 to 5 locations, are scoring an 86 NPS. And so what we find is that the level of maybe intimacy or relationships that exist at those small locations tends to be higher. And I think we can all think about the processes where general management or senior leadership or ownership or whoever in those 1 to 5 locations, they're shaking the hands with the customers, making sure things are going right. Processes don't have to scale across 30 or 50 locations. They only have to scale across 2 or 3. And as we see a lot of dealership aggregations going on, and we see customers who have been doing business with a location that's a 1 to 5 location dealership getting consumed by a 20 plus location dealership, you're going to have some challenges around the perception of satisfaction and their net promoter score, because they're accustomed to this higher touch, higher quality experience. And they're going into a large organization, which seems to not be able to deliver that same level of experience. My challenge out there to the group is, I think that the ability of large organizations to be able to implement and manage processes and to be able to deliver a consistent, high quality experience to customers across the organization, regardless of location, should be a goal for these larger dealers to figure out how they could be competitive with the smaller dealers. Emily, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. We see and we'll talk about this too on the employee side, but how these scores can vary by location. But I think that it's possible, right? I think they just need to find ways in which I think it starts like with their company culture. And that can take some time too, is just through the acquisition phases to get that, implemented across all of these new stores. It'd be interesting to see, like, looking at the scores of maybe the original location versus the ones that had been acquired too, and how those scores may compare to one another. But, I'm sure a lot of it is just going to take some time too. But I think, our panel did a great job of talking about, a lot of this is a story that just needs to continue to be told, right? And people need to hear these things over and over again. So, making sure that messaging about like the mission and vision and the customer satisfaction usually is a big part of that, right? The service and the experience that they're providing. And so making sure that that's continually, done day in and day out and repeated to staff so that they're also delivering that experience to the customers.
Yeah, well, and I also think I always love to suggest to clients to use the customers so that if they're going through an acquisition process and they have, they've acquired a smaller dealer group with higher NPS scores than their own, go out and talk to those customers. You can look at the survey results, you can look at the comments, but go have physical conversations with those customers and find out what was that made them feel so committed and so engaged with those organizations. And the reality is some of those things you're not going to be able to sustain. Maybe they were processes that were just so intimate or so specific to a smaller organization that you can't replicate and scale that process. But there potentially is a lot of value. And I think sometimes in the acquisition phase, the larger organization just puts their foot down and says, this is the way we do things. We're not open to change. We need to assimilate the smaller organizations into our process. And I understand that. I understand acquisitions can be tough. I just recommend looking at some of those if you're acquiring a high performing, customer experience organization.
Yeah, I think, and just quickly to that, it made me think about at the John Deere user group event this year, we did a sit-down discussion with Pattison Ag CEO Doug Tibbet, and he talked just about that. And I think that recording, if it's not yet available up on our website, will be soon. But that maybe if someone is going through some of those challenges, if this resonates with you, I'd recommend downloading it because he had shared some really good experiences with how they tackled just that.
Yeah, no, it's great. All right, let's kind of dig in a little bit and start looking at NPS by department. And so if we look at parts department, so general parts department scores for NPS by the department is 83. And most of the parts departments that we are working with have exceeded their pre-pandemic levels. So one of the trends that we did see, and I'm sure a lot of people out there, whether it was NPS or revenue or retention or whatever it was, we saw a pretty significant drop early in the pandemic, as in, kind of 2020, and probably I think we hit bottom at 2021, where scores were kind of generally trending up, things were going well, and then we hit that period of time and went down. And so when we think about parts at 83, and that's exceeded that level that we were before we hit the pandemic, it's great. It means we not only have rebounded from that trough, that decrease in NPS score, but we're getting better. And I think that's awesome. Whether or not that level of improvement is sustainable, we'll see. I think it should be. I think everywhere I look, people are talking about the customer experience or the employee experience. They're talking about how critical it is for customer retention and growth. And I think, post-pandemic, it's really looking like people are going to continue that upward trend and focus on CX. So areas that we see for improvement, in-stock parts availability is still a challenge. Customer service attitudes are still kind of an area where I think that, they haven't rebounded quite yet and need some improvement. And then in general, kind of that overall willingness to recommend is an opportunity to improve. So I think that from a parts perspective, just some of those areas for improvement may or may not relate directly to you, but you can either look at our surveys if you're working with us or your own surveys if you're doing something different. Any questions or comments on parts, Emily?
Yeah, I think I was just generally excited to see things rebounding and doing so strong. I think, it's been a challenging couple of years for all sorts of different reasons. And so I think it's great to see things moving upward.
Yeah, well, the supply chain issues, I think that everybody encountered, right? I think that like in-stock parts availability, still hasn't fully recovered, but it was a tough time and a lot of really upset customers. So some real clarity around why that dipped. So if parts was at 83 NPS, service is at 75 NPS. And so a full 8 points below parts. And the other interesting tidbit there is our service department scores have not exceeded pre-pandemic levels. So while parts has and is getting better, service is still below that level. And I don't know if it has to do with some of the challenges that organizations are around tech retention or things like that. But that's a critical thing that probably needs some focus in everybody's organization. Areas for improvement, employee retention obviously is a challenge that we're seeing there. Training programs, definitely something that needs some focus. And then the customer service attitudes also, when they're dealing with the service department, are opportunities for improvement. So let's move on to, go ahead, service.
I was gonna say, I think, we might see some change there. There's been so much effort, at least on the service tech and employee focus, over the last couple years, it's been going for a while, but we've heard some significant changes, I think, even from like the HR panel today about some creative ways that they're trying to improve that, which in turn should carry over to the customer. So it's something to look forward to, I think, in the future.
Yeah. All right, so parts 83, service 75, sales is 83 NPS. And so, and once again, sales has exceeded their pre-pandemic levels. So once again, sales took a big dip and now it's on its way back up and is above where it was before we got into it. Definitely, some, opportunities for improvement on the sales side is kind of a perception of fairness. So are the salespeople being fair and are they being courteous? Those are definitely some opportunities that I think that sales departments can figure out. Probably, how can we do some training with salespeople to make sure that they're being perceived as fair, and how can we make sure that they're saying the right type of things to be perceived as courteous? So, Emily, anything on sales?
No, nothing to add there. That's great.
Cool. So if we look at kind of the last 5 years of trends, we've talked about this a little bit. The scores dropped really dramatically. I think those are probably a combination of supply chain challenges, government mandates, business interruptions, staffing issues. Our scores actually hit the bottom or the lowest levels in January of 2021, and then really kind of had a bit of a rapid recovery through January 2022. And so now they're just starting to kind of fall back off a little bit. And, I think part of that may be that, things were so low and there was so much frustration. And when everybody kind of got back to work, they started asking themselves like, hey, what do I need to do to deliver a better experience? What do I need to do a better job at, my job? And I think you had a lot of people really working hard to deliver a true great experience for the customer. And now I wonder whether or not we're seeing some of that kind of settle back into a routine where the employees are saying, hey, the customers aren't as demanding or as upset as they were before. And, I can kind of come off a little bit of working so hard to make sure everything's perfect. And so, I think that's a risk, right? It's a risk and it's an opportunity. The risk is it continues to slide, where people don't feel like, they need to continue to up their game on a customer experience perspective. And dealerships are going to. Some of the dealers out there are absolutely going to maintain that level of customer experience and quality. And the ones that start to slack off a little bit are not. I think it's incumbent upon supervisors and management at this juncture to be able to identify and catch, as one of our clients has said in the past, employees doing the right things, reward them, recognize them, and continue to build on that strength, versus letting everybody kind of, take that deep breath and start to slack off a little bit. So anyways, any thoughts, Emily?
Yeah, I think that's a great suggestion and takeaway is, to start to see things plateau, right? Just to be cautious, to be careful, because sometimes people can tend to let off the gas a little bit and then get themselves caught.
Yeah, so that's great. I think recent scores do indicate that we're starting kind of, I know we've kind of peaked, we came off a little bit, and it looks like, and this is just, kind of a hypothetical, it looks like we're starting to kind of improve a little bit or starting to trend back up slightly. My theory on that is we may be moving into a bit of a softening economy. And so now we have the situation where people are going, hey, I'm maybe not as confident about my job, or, I really want to make sure that things are going well and I'm not as complacent or whatever, maybe I'm more committed to the organization, those type of things. And so I think that there's a chance here at this kind of this turn where you can start to, once again, like I said before, catch people in the organization doing the right things and start to really reinforce that behavior and keep that curve moving back up.
Yeah, great suggestions.
All right, let's dig in a little bit and maybe a little bit too granular, but let's talk about parts department highlights, right? So in-stock parts availability, as we talked about, still requires some improvement. It's been steadily increasing since 2021. Availability after hours is at its highest level in the last 5 years. So I don't know if that's indicative of a trend that, through the pandemic, we found out that really people want this after hours service or these non-standard hours. And because things were sort of in flux and everybody was working to meet demand, that we started to change that behavior. And now that behavior is starting to change on a regular basis. So just something to think about from an organizational perspective. Friendly attitude has not reached its pre-pandemic level. So once again, that's a great opportunity in the parts side. How do we start making sure that employees are kind of, doing the right things to be perceived as being friendly and open? And, just those are kind of general opportunities. If we look at service, I'll just kind of go through and grab a couple of quick service highlights. They hit a bottom like we talked about in 2021. Interestingly, the parts department, kept going up. The service department experienced what we call a second trough in September of 2022, with scores dropping across the board from the previous year's lows. So they're kind of jumping around and all over the place a little bit. And so I think that is an area within organizations that I would keep an eye on to find out what's going on and see if we can improve that. And then the other thing I thought was kind of cool was all service department scores, well, not cool, but all service department scores are lower than their pre-pandemic level, which is an interesting stat, with the exception of repairs made correctly the first time. So nothing has fully recovered on the service side, but repairs made correctly the first time seems to be going back up. And then I'm going to kind of, jump off. There's some additional information where we talk for parts service and sales about the NPS for size for each one of those departments, and a bunch of other findings and hypotheses and things like that we have. But I think we're kind of halfway here. Emily, I need to jump into voice of employee.
Yeah, we have benchmark data that we want to share with you on the employee experience as well as online reputation before we get into the awards portion of the session. So if that's all right with you, let's talk a little bit about what we're seeing on the employee side. Ryan started off talking about the customer NPS score, and on the employee NPS, what we call the eNPS, calculated the exact same way. But one thing to keep in mind is that scores or expectations around employee net promoter scores, as Ryan was mentioning, are quite different than on the customer side. So for some of you maybe who have not done an employee survey before on the call, you might be quite surprised, but the benchmark is anywhere between 5 and 20. And so really high performing dealers are able to reach an eNPS above a 20. And that's really what's considered to be a good employee NPS score, whereas we talked about like a 50 and above on the customer side. So quite a bit different. What's common though that we see between customer and employee NPS is that the dealership size, like based on their location, we see the eNPS decreasing as the dealership size increases. So same thing on the customer side. So that's quite interesting there. So we break this down again, we'll kind of talk about our small size, mid-size, and large dealership groups. One thing though that we did see last year specifically when looking at eNPS is that our large dealer groups actually they had an increase year over year. So I think again, a testament to the efforts that they're putting forth and collecting employee feedback and improving. But that benchmark score did increase from 2021 to 2022. And, I think we see some common trends like feedback coming back in the data. When we measure employee NPS, we kind of look at a few key areas, one being biz power and one being employee power. The biz power focuses around more about how the employee feels about company's leadership and direction, where things are headed and how things are being executed. And on the employee side, obviously it's much more focused around, how that individual feels like in their day-to-day job, their direct reports with their supervisor and kind of future advancements. And so we've seen some common trends there in year over year with the data that we're collecting, some common things about what's going well and what isn't going well. There's been a steady decrease for a while there, Ryan, too, I think on the employee side, just like we saw on the customer side over the last 5 years or so. And so we're
Yeah.
starting to see some increases in certain categories coming back, like we talked about on the large size dealer groups. I'm not sure if there's anything you want to add along those lines.
No, I think those are, you summarized it great on the trends that we've experienced and kind of the different categorizations of NPS. So it's great.
Good. I think in our benchmark report, there's a lot more data that goes a bit deeper into the specifics of each one of those key areas of voice of employee and the different dealership sizes and how the data panned out. Also, there's some key takeaways. So for you, I'd recommend when we get a chance to download this, but you'll be able to get some recommendations on maybe where you want to focus efforts as it relates to each one of these key areas. But one last piece, I want to talk about our online reputation analysis. So we just had this last session.
Hey, Emily,
Kaya.
one quick, can I interrupt you just one quick? One of the things that I think is neat just to share is, that the bullet 200 overview, which is that general disconnect between employees and leaders. And I just think it's one of the things that I find really interesting about the employee process is that staff generally thinks that leadership really doesn't know exactly what's going on and doesn't do a good job communicating about what's going on. And when I see low scores with some of our clients in those areas, I always want to tell them, listen, this is a relatively free solution to this problem, to making sure that staff understands what's going on. And when I suggested that with one client, they said, I don't know why they don't understand what's going on. We send an email out every single month. We're telling them exactly what we're doing and where we're going and how we're approaching it. And it's just not possible. And my suggestion there was, well, maybe you need to go talk to some of those users employees that rated you low and find out how they get communicated to, because maybe the email process of sharing your company's strategy and approach isn't resonating with them. And one of the groups that I looked at recently that had relatively low scores was in an older age bracket. And so, or not older age bracket, excuse me, older tenure, which would infer possibly older age, but they probably have a different way of listening. And so I would just encourage you, those are easy problems to solve from a communication perspective. Find out what they are in your organization and find out how employees want to be communicated with, to make sure that you're using different channels of communication to share strategy and share understanding. So
great suggestion. Okay, so online reputation analysis. So when we look at this data here, this is really interesting. So when we measure this, what we call reputation score, we look at 3 key factors. So much different than NPS that we've been talking about. But there's 3 key categories that we measure when we're measuring their online reputation and their performance. And the first one is the rating. The second is recency, and the third is volume. And I'll go back through each one of those. So rating is probably what everyone is most familiar with. We all pay attention, to the 5-star rating. If somebody has 4.1 stars or, so on and so forth. So that's something I think we can all understand and relate to. The other 2 key areas on our reputation score are recency and volume. And recency is just as it sounds. The recency is about having a steady stream of review activity coming in, right? So keeping those reviews being consistent. That's a key part of search engine optimization, right? Is to have those reviews be recent reviews that have come in. And then volume, right? Is just the sheer number of reviews that you have since you've created that listing. And these 2 areas of recency and volume are something that a lot of our clients, when they come to us, have not put any effort or focus in on. Most of the focus has always been around just like, well, I have this rating, it's great, and a lot of times we find dealers do have really good ratings, but our average is 4.6 out of 5 stars. And so they have a really great rating. I think Kai mentioned earlier, like she doesn't look at anything that's less than 4 stars. So you most likely have a great rating. A lot of your competitors do as well. What's key that we need to take a look at though is, are you having reviews coming in like every month for each one of your stores, and keeping that consistently coming in. And then from a volume perspective, is having, you really want to have more reviews than the competitors in your local area. And so when we run these reports, we compare you to other equipment dealers that are within a, geographical range of the location in which we're looking at. So that's something that you're going to want to pay close attention to. We often find that our dealers that have over like 125 reviews, tend to do very well. Now that's going to vary a little bit based on geography, right? As you get into a little more urban areas, but a lot of you guys are in not as urban areas. So it's going to depend. There's going to be some variance there again, based on kind of what you're selling and what your geographical areas that you're working in. So we're finding that the dealers working with us actually have a really great recency score. Part of that is because they are able to automate like invitations. Kaya mentioned that earlier, you simply have to ask and they're willing to leave. So, we're able to automate that for them, send out invitations. So it allows that data to keep coming back in and continually have reviews posting. So again, I think a good testament to the dealers that have put forth an effort to focus in on their online reputation and are really excelling when it comes to the benchmark there. So there's a lot more data. I don't want to take up too much of our time, but in the benchmark report that goes through kind of a scoring system to help you understand, if you were to run a reputation scorecard for yourself, how you would stack up against the competition. So make sure to check that out. There's also some key takeaways in there as well on suggestions of what you can do to improve your online reputation and your reputation score. So Alina just brought up on the screen for us a QR code. That you can download this now. It's actually available online. So if you are in today's session, feel free to scan that. You can actually go view it right now and get a copy of the benchmark report. So we'll leave that up there for a few minutes, and then we can also transition here and start talking about our top dealer program. And Alina,
Great. And Emily, I also,
Yeah, go ahead.
sorry. No,
Yeah,
I
go
just
ahead.
wanted to tell everybody that in the follow-up email that you will get from us with the links to the recorded sessions and everything, I would also share with you the copy of the report. But I'm sure that actually some of you have already asked where you can get a copy of it. So yes, you can just access it right now through the QR code.
Let's do it. We're super excited. Thank everyone for their patience and waiting. We have been doing the Satisfied Top Dealer Award program. I've been here for almost 15 years, and it's been going on since I started. Brian may know exactly how far back it goes in time, but it's been around for quite a while. Typically, we do announce these sometime during the first quarter of the year. So appreciate everyone's kind of patience and waiting to learn this information at the summit today. But a little bit of background information, maybe for some of you on the call who have not participated or not familiar with this, but any organizations that participate in one of our three solutions, so the voice of customer, voice of employee, or satisfied reviews, can become eligible to qualify as a top dealer. And so with becoming a top dealer, you obviously get sort of this honor recognition, trusted dealer status. You are able to utilize that status to be able to sort of attract and retain customers and new talent, allows you to increase brand awareness and exposure as well. And so I think if with that, let's kind of hop into who our winners are. Hopefully we have some of you on today's session, or maybe a representative from the dealership. I know not everyone could make it during this particular time, but we're going to go through each one of our three solutions. So we're going to look at our voice of customers, so dealer groups that provided exceptional customer experience, and then our voice of employee for superb employee experiences, and then our dealers that provided remarkable online reputation. And so I've got, I think, each dealership listed here. We can pull up, I think, starting maybe with our customer.
I actually want to do a drum roll.
All
right.
Thanks, Alina.
One more thing.
Oh, yes, and so for those that are on the call today, or on today's session that are going to be announced as winners, just know that we will be emailing you your marketing packet, which contains all of the promotional items to support our winners and allow you, as I mentioned before, to utilize this status to be able to attract, new talent as well as, bring in some new customers as well.
All right, now we have the drum roll.
Yes, all right. So if anyone, I think we may have 2 slides here, so we'll kind of need to walk through this, but feel free to, I don't know, Alina, are they able to unmute themselves, or I'm not sure if they're capable or not, but raise their hands if you're on, maybe even put a message in the Q&A. But we have recognitions for A&H equipment, American State, Atlantic Tractor, Bartron Supply, Beard Equipment, Berry Companies, CalPost Machinery, Casanovia Equipment, Coastal Equipment, Cross Implement, Greenland Equipment and Greenline Service, as well as Green Mark Equipment. And then we have Hogue Implement, Hudson, Lassiter, Lawson Implement, and Leslie Equipment. Miller Bradford, Murphy Tractor, Neff, Phillips Equipment, SH Dayton, Tennessee Tractor, Thomason Tractor, and Wade Incorporated. So these are all of our Voice of Customer award winners for providing exceptional customer experiences. So all of these dealers have exceeded their industry benchmarks and throughout the last year and are recognized as a 2023 top dealer. So congratulations to all of you. I think I did see a couple people raise their hand that are on today's session. I was hoping maybe you guys would be able to share your video, but it doesn't look like.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to also figure out. And
Okay.
I think maybe we have to make them panelists. Maybe I'll work on that.
We
as
can
you...
unmute. See if you can unmute. I'll keep going through.
Yep.
We have our Voice of Employee Award winners here next, coming up. So 21st Century, Anne can actually unmute herself. She was one of our panelists if she wants, if she's available, or Twitter camera on. Hanlon Ag Center, Heritage Tractor, Lakeside Trucks. Rob Durham was also one of our panelists earlier today. Mead Tractor and Parallel Ag. So those little congratulations there for our Voice of Employee Award winners. And then on the reputation management side, we have quite a few here as well. AC McCartney, Evermill Outdoors, Atlas Equipment, Boone Tractor, Bruno's Power Sports, Farm Depot and Grove Equipment, Loft Equipment, Midwest Equipment, Miller Bradford, Nance Tractor, North Star Hardware, Notre Dame Motors, Powell Tractor, PR Equipment. We have Surrey Equipment, Three Rivers Equipment, and Winston Tractor. So quite a few winners to be recognized here. It looks like we've got a few people on. I can see some people posting in the Q&A or raising hands. So for all of you that have joined with us, I just want to say congratulations. If anyone has any questions too about how to become a top dealer, feel free to post a question in the Q&A, or again, you can always email support@satisfied.com too for more information.
We were planning to do a photo op, but I can't find a way to make
Zoom's not
them.
allowing us.
I think we need to make them as panelists. And I don't know how.
If I can't do that, I would do that.
I don't know if maybe Paul or Doug or the people that
I'm gonna
have
try.
joined.
We'll see if this works. If people raise their hand, I will try and promote you to a panelist and see if you want to accept that. Feel free.
Yes, if you can do that, that would be great.
I'm certainly trying. Let's see. Trying to go through and recognize everyone who's on here. If I've missed somebody, raise your hand. I'm trying to go as fast as I can here. think it's letting me.
Oh, nice. Oh yeah, because you're the host.
I'm trying, yeah. And maybe only if you stop sharing too, we might be able to put more of them on there.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. There's some familiar faces. Congratulations, everyone.
Yeah, congrats.
Super excited.
Couldn't do it without you guys.
That is the same, both ways, right?
Yeah.
We couldn't do it without you guys either.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. I think it takes a lot of commitment in the organizations to be a part of it, right? Just focus on the survey results and drive changes in the organization, resolve customer issues. So awesome commitment. Thanks for putting all the effort in on your side to really make the difference. So.
And
Yeah,
I
thank you
think
guys for all the support and flexibility that you guys have had with Berry companies over the last year and a half or so that we've been on board. It's a fantastic system you guys have.
Thanks, Audra.
Yeah, I'll also say good partnership. It's a lot of fun working with you guys. It's always good.
Thanks, Paul.
I'm still trying to add people. There's people waiting. Sorry. I don't know if I've hit my limit. I'm not sure either. Okay, looks like more people are coming, so. Oh, okay. And sorry, people, if I invited you more than once and you don't want to show your camera. I apologize. I was trying to make sure I didn't miss anybody. No pressure. Well, I think, like, as I mentioned, we'll be emailing you all the details and that information afterwards. If you guys are available to stay on and join us for happy hour, I think we have that coming up next, right, Alina, at 4 o'clock Central,
yes,
as I mentioned at the beginning. Oh, go ahead, Alina.
yeah, I do, because I did see that Audra and Anne just closed their cameras. Can, just for one split second, can we take a screenshot with all of you guys' beautiful smiles?
Wasn't
Awesome.
prepared for pictures today.
Photo op.
All right. Ryan, fix your hair, please.
Yep.
1, 2, 3. Beautiful.
Awesome. Thanks, Alina. So if you want, feel free to join us. I think we're going to take like a 15-minute break roughly, and then come back at 4. We'll have our happy hour, give away our big giveaway as well too for the NASCAR gift card for the ride and drive. So if you can join, that'd be awesome. If you have a beverage that you'd like to bring along, feel free for our virtual happy hour.